Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, South African researchers are keeping a close eye on the infection rates of a new coronavirus variant. C.1.2 is still only present at low levels in the country, but its mutations are similar to hyper-transmissible strains like Delta. Also, months after a volcanic eruption in DR Congo sent hundreds of thousands fleeing their homes, thousands are still crammed into flimsy shelters, struggling to find enough food and clean drinking water. Many accuse police of diverting crucial humanitarian aid. And the diversity of an unparalleled freshwater swamp in Benin is under threat from ever-increasing human exploitation. The Hlanzoon forest is the last of its kind in the country. Poverty has seen rural populations devastate local wildlife. But first, South African scientists are monitoring a new coronavirus variant that's mutating twice as fast as others. There are still relatively few cases of C.1.2, but researchers say that it's still too early to tell how it might evolve. Nadine Theron tells us more.
South African scientists say the new C.1.2 variant of COVID-19 first appeared here in May 2021, but it's since been detected in Botswana, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Mauritius, Switzerland, Portugal, the UK and even China. But by far the most cases are here in South Africa. The new variant has mutated more than 50 times and it shares many mutations with the Beta and Delta variants. These strains are more transmissible and less resistant to antibodies. The big question is whether or not vaccination will be effective against C.1.2. Scientists are still running studies and they're hoping to publish their results in the next few weeks.
So I think probably the most important thing that we want to emphasize in this press briefing is that C.1.2 is present at very low levels. At this stage, we do not have experimental data to confirm how it reacts in terms of sensitivity to antibodies. But based on what we do know from other variants, and based on the fact that some of the mutations in C.1.2 are shared with these other variants, we have considerable confidence that the vaccines that are being rolled out in South Africa will continue to protect us against severe disease and death.
The World Health Organization will only classify C.1.2 as a variant of concern and identify it by assigning it a letter from the Greek alphabet once it's been detected in more than 20% of COVID-19 cases, and if it's found to be more transmissible and less responsive to vaccines. But scientists are monitoring it closely as it's spreading at the same rate as the Delta variant did in the beginning. Scientists warn that we will still see many more variants arise in the future.
Nadine Theron there for us. Now, in Nigeria, there were protests in the capital of Edo State this week after the introduction of vaccine passes for access to public places. People living in Edo State have been given until the second week of September to get vaccinated or have their movements restricted. A similar policy has been brought in the state of Ondo. Now, the policy is a bid to boost vaccination rates in the country. Authorities in Edo say that all who have recently died of COVID-19 and 96% of those infected were unvaccinated. Nigeria plans on vaccinating over 110 million people over the next 2 years, but current access to jabs remains limited, as the country has so far only received fewer than 10 million doses for its population of over 210 million people. There's been mounting concern about a suspected leak of heavy metals into the Shikapa and Kasai rivers in the center of DR Congo. People living along their banks have had their health seriously affected, and local animals have been turning up dead ever since the river's waters turned red earlier this month. The pollution appears to have been caused by a leak at a major diamond mine in neighboring Angola. Our correspondent, Clément Bonneau, tells us more.
The Chikapa and Kasai rivers have now returned to their normal colour, but Congolese authorities continue to urge for extreme caution. Locals have been advised not to drink water nor eat fish from these two rivers, where animals including hippos have been found dead. A government delegation led by the Environment Minister, Eve Bazaiba, visited the affected areas last weekend.
There are many cases of diseases. We have counted more than 4,000 people with diarrhea, including people who have died from diarrhea. There are also people suffering from skin rashes. Doctors have also reported cases of genital diseases.
The Congolese government believes that an incident at a diamond mine in neighbouring Angola could have caused the pollution. The Kotoka mining company, which operates the fourth largest diamond mine in the world, reported earlier this month a leak from its tailing dam used to store waste material. Kotoka therefore says that sand mixed with water was accidentally released into nearby rivers.
Whether this was accidental or not, if both the company and the Angolan government acknowledge the problem, it's a first step. There is a clear cause and effect relationship. What is important to us right now is this acknowledgement, this recognition, so that there can be reparations in due time.
Meanwhile, the Angolan Environment Minister says it's too early to determine whether the pollution has indeed crossed the border. Investigations are still underway, and the two countries have agreed to set up a joint team to investigate the issue further.
Clément Bonnereau there for us. Now, more than 3 months after the eruption of the Nyiragongo volcano in the east of DR Congo, thousands are still living in makeshift tents. Many are struggling to cover their basic needs and feel like they've been abandoned by their government. Nicolas Chemin with more.
The eruption of the Nyiragongo volcano took place more than 3 months ago, but volcanic rock can still be seen. The eruption killed 32 people and forced tens of thousands to flee their homes. Today, thousands are still living in makeshift camps.
Nilikimbilia hapa kujenga kaburende na nimekosa jinsi tufanye nikikia jenga burende sana nilikia jenga burende jio sasa njara inatutesa mai burende tukiona kabisa tunataka kufia ndani Caritas ndio nilitumia mai masiku ketuandika kadogo
na kwa sasa mimi napata wakazi mimi naenda tafutia mtu mwenye atanisaidia anipatia hata 2000 francs mimi namtumikia kisha njoo mimi nakula.
The government has set up more than 1,000 larger tents that will soon welcome some displaced people, but the location was recently hit by torrential rain.
Ce vent a pu écrouler, a fait écrouler beaucoup d'arbres, que vous voyez des arbres qui sont écroulés et qui ont également fait tomber passer d'abris. Au total, nous avons 67 abris qui sont détruits sur le 1100 étoiles qui se trouvent sur le site.
Some displaced people have accused government officials of embezzling some of the humanitarian aid. NGOs say the priority now is access to drinking water for the thousands who live in these camps.
Ecologists are warning that one of Benin's last freshwater swamp forests is at risk of disappearing. The fragile ecosystem of the Hlanzoon have seen numbers of monkeys and birds plummet because of the extent of poaching and a logging free-for-all. Take a look.
This rare woodland in Benin is one of the last of its kind. The Hlanzoon swamp forest in the West African country is home to unrivaled flora and fauna. Ecologists are keeping close watch on this area, accessible only by canoe.
Listen, you can hear the call of the hornbill. The hornbill is a large bird with a big beak. It's a bit like the African cousin of the toucan. They are an omnivorous species. They eat insects and fruit.
Over 160 animal species live here together, camouflaged and spread around the dense vegetation. But despite these paradise conditions, the animal population is plummeting. People who live around the forest are hunting its animals. For some, it's driven by hunger. According to the World Bank, over a third of Benin lives under the poverty line, but others illegally poach animals to sell them.
When you go to Zogbodomi, you see by the roadside people bring monitor lizards, antelope and other species. Where do they kill them? If it's not on the plantations, it's in this forest.
Yet even more serious than poaching is the loss of habitat. Villagers cut down trees for firewood. Recently, they started to drain parts of the swamp to plant crops. A decade ago, the forest stretched over nearly 3,000 hectares. Much less remains today.
It turns out that of these 2,945 hectares, we estimate that the remaining forest space covers 500 to 600 hectares, more or less.
Forest defenders say the government must provide incentives so inhabitants use their environment more sustainably.
If we support them to do agriculture, market gardening, small trade, if we support them above all to encourage tourism in this forest, if we support them to develop areas to produce species for firewood, these communities will preserve these forests, because the resources that they contain are the resources of humanity today.
Meanwhile, the remaining animals have grown cautious of humans. It's becoming harder to spot the remarkable species that call the Hlanzun forest home.
And finally, the results of Kenya's first ever national wildlife census has shown that a slowdown in the loss of elephants has left the country with the fourth largest population of the animals in the world. The figures recorded a 12% jump since those recorded in 2014, when poaching of elephants was at its highest. Now, the survey also shows the number of other at-risk animals have also gone up. However, there are still warnings that wildlife in the country is still facing serious pressures from the demand for land for human settlements. Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us, and do so again if you can. Till then, take care.